Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with an extraordinarily juicy, amazing memoir by Nancy Shear. It just came out. It's called I Knew a Man Who Knew Brahms. Actually, this is clickbait, just as the title of this video is. Well, my title is more true to the facts than this is. Yes, at the beginning of the book, Nancy Shear meets a guy who knew Brahms. It has nothing to do with the rest of the book. Nothing, zero, zippo. Actually, what this is about is her encounters in the musical universe with, and particularly her relationship to Leopold Stokowski and later Mstislav Rostropovich and others that she met in her travels through the musical universe. And Nancy Shear is an extraordinary woman, really extraordinary and admirable in many, many, many ways. Her musical judgment isn't really the issue here, although it's in here. Well, it's about these people that she's encountered and that she met and that she worked with and that she knew intimately, with the accent on the int. Boy, did she know them intimately. And amazingly, her career was extraordinary. And we need to talk about her background a little bit in order for you to understand just what she accomplished and what she's done in this juicy tell-all memoir. Okay, Nancy Shear came from Philadelphia, from a poor family, a poor-ish family, I mean a middle-class family, that sort of thing. But she wasn't wealthy or well-off or well-placed. You find out like halfway through the book that she's actually comes from a Jewish background. It doesn't make any difference, but she just lets it slip. And she was in love with Leopold Stokowski and the sound of the Philadelphia Orchestra, particularly. She didn't have enough money to go to Philadelphia Orchestra concerts. Her family background was absolutely miserable. Her father was cold and abusive. She only referred to him by first name, and completely without affection. He terrorized her mother, who was always on the verge of a panic attack or a nervous breakdown. Her mental health was very, very fragile as a result of years of abuse. It was only decades into this narrative that Nancy and her mother, Miss Shear, can I call you Nancy? Thank you. Nancy and her mother actually escaped the clutches of her father, and they separated and at least provided a little bit of relief for them. Because of this very abusive and emotionally horrible background, she sought an outlet in music. She became a cellist, but more importantly, at the age of 15, she started sneaking into Philadelphia Orchestra concerts. She found a way in. She got initially some, people gave her some tickets, or she would stand there like a homeless waif, begging to get into the orchestra. And she usually did, but she found a way to sneak in illegally. And she did it so much and was such a gadfly in the backstage at the orchestra that everybody sort of knew her, knew who she was. And eventually, 2 years later, they hired her as a part-time music librarian to work in the music library, where she got to know everybody. And the other music librarians were very protective of her, because this is around 1965-ish, 1964. Being a single female in that world with those artists was dangerous. I mean, it was truly dangerous. And they looked after her, fortunately, and protected her. And she was in love, quite literally in love with Leopold Stokowski. And she got to know him, and he got to know her, and they formed a relationship. And the question is, in the book, and she deals with this, everything with total honesty, whether or not they ever had creepy sex, because he was 60 some odd years older than she was. And she probably would have done it, she admits, at least later in their relationship. But they never did. So I'm telling you right away, that's a spoiler. They came as close as you could come without actually doing it, which was a good thing. But because she came from this emotionally deprived background, she had an understanding of what these outrageous control freak artists wanted in their emotional lives, what they needed. And she was willing to provide that Leopold Stokowski, not to, so much to others, but to Leopold Stokowski for sure. She also had a boyfriend. She also went to college and had an affair with one of her professors. She later had an affair with cellist Mstislav Rostropovich, which is a whole other story that she doesn't go into in quite as much detail, but it's also very pathological. I mean, she heard that he was in trouble with the Soviet Union because of his support for Solzhenitsyn and Andrei Sakharov. So she went to Moscow to see how he was doing, to find him, because they were not in communication. And, she did some really kind of bizarre things because of her obsession with these people. And the relationship with Stokowski is incredible because he was a control freak, one of the freakiest control freaks of all, as we know. I mean, as his recorded performances tell us. And he hired her to work with him as a music librarian, which is what she did. She became the music librarian for the Curtis Institute for quite a bit of time. And, it's amazing how she's able to do all of these things. She didn't actually get, we don't, in the course of this narrative, she's doing so many extraordinary things with extraordinary people that you don't realize that she's in high school and then she has to go to college. And she finally does go to college. And when she graduates, she needs a job. So she telephones Rudolf Serkin and he hires her for Curtis. The access that she had simply because of who she was. Just a bright, young female with an unquenchable desire to acquire music, however she could do it. And the men, in this case it was mostly men, who made music. And apparently she maintained very, very good relationships with just about everybody while doing this. She was on excellent terms with Stokowski's family. He also had these other clingers, these two women who followed him everywhere and who worked for him and did whatever he said. He treated them miserably, and they kept coming back from where he was sleeping with one of them. Her name was Natalie, and it's just otherworldly, the circumstances in which she inserted herself. But it seems from this memoir, it's only one person's point of view, that she really managed to maintain her sense of focus and her sense of self and her integrity throughout the entire thing. I mean, she had no qualms about having affairs with married men. She felt, well, that was isn't their problem, and so it's refreshing actually to see just how matter of fact she can be about how she navigated the circumstances of these people. She detested Eugene Ormandy, who, she said was sort of a miserable person, which actually sort of comports with the facts as we know them. I don't think her appraisal of Ormandy is necessarily fair. I mean, she knew the orchestra. She knew that they probably had issues with him, some of them. But then again, he was there for 30 some odd years. So it had to have worked out on some level. She tries to be very honest in her musical appraisals, but I don't think her musical opinions are as valuable as simply telling her story. She gets some things, I musically, I think, wrong, things which are belied by the recorded evidence. Certainly the evidence of, Ormandy's recordings, and certainly, she mentions, for example, talking about Stokowski conducting Tchaikovsky's Fourth, that the stuff that he did in rehearsal was totally nuts, but most of it was sort of worked out by the time he made the recording. Well, we have his recording, and it's still totally nuts. It may be less totally nuts than what he did in rehearsal, and we weren't there, and she was. So I can't say, but her admiration for these people, obviously colors her opinion of them, and that's okay. No one's asking her for a cool musical analysis. It's about what she loved, and what she loved was music that expressed what she regarded as passionate spontaneity, and Stokowski provided it in spades to her. And so did Rostropovich, who was a much different situation. I mean, he was married to Galina Vishnevskaya, and to hear Nancy Shear's perspective on Rostropovich, which is much less detailed than what happened with Stokowski. She doesn't really go into the weeds about how she and Rostropovich were doing it and where, but it's fascinating to read Vishnevskaya's memoir, Galina, which says nothing about her love life with Rostropovich, past the point where they get married. They're married, they have 2 kids, that's it, and they're married. Shear really gives a totally different slant on what Rostropovich was doing on his tours abroad, but that was, as she points out, common knowledge. It really was, but that's neither here nor there. Well, the bottom line is that it's mostly about Stokowski and about Nancy Shear, who now runs a fine arts consulting business. I mean, she's had a remarkable career. I've known about her forever. I know who she is, and I've had some tangential contact. I'm not sure with her directly, but with people who worked with her and whatnot. I mean, I know the name. So when this came out, I was very curious to read it because I had no clue, frankly, that what her background was and what she'd done and who she'd known. And so, yes, she was with Stokowski 17 days before he died. She visited him regularly, even after he moved back to the UK. She was having an affair with one of her professors at Temple University, so she managed to go to England and get a job doing, music librarian stuff for some music festivals and things. It's just amazing how she acquired a skill set that would essentially allow her to do whatever she damn well pleased with whoever she damn well pleased, and I don't know. I admire her tremendously. I think she tells an absolutely amazing story of how the performing arts world operated in the 60s and 70s and 80s primarily, and how a single unmarried female career-minded person, because she never wanted to be married, she never wanted to have kids, how she was able to create this remarkable, truly remarkable career for herself. And I think this is one hell of a story. It really is. It's a tremendous story. Even if you leave out the salacious bits. The salacious bits are fun. Let's not kid ourselves, because these people were just pervertedly strange. They really, really were. By conventional standards. And Shear is one of those people who accepts that great artists get away with certain things. Now, of course, they can't. And she points that out. She mentions that nowadays the things that these people did would never have been tolerated. But they were tolerated, and she wanted this life. And in order to have this life, she had to walk this very, very fine line between doing what she wanted to do and working with these people without actually prostituting herself. And she did that. I am aghast with admiration for how she managed to keep herself intact from her background with her psychological issues, which she talks about quite frankly. And she had this need for father figures in her life because she had no real father, etc. And, she's very, very open about it all. And it's because of that she made lemonade out of lemons. She created a fabulous life in music, the thing that she loved and wanted more than anything else in the world, with the people that she admired the most, all because of how she was. And it just goes to show, there's a moral to this story, which is that everybody has traumas in their lives, and the difference between those who manage them and those who don't really comes down to coping skills, something that is very difficult to teach if it can be taught. And she had this resilience, this resilience and intelligence and ability to somehow manage dealing with unbelievable people. and to bask in their reflected glory. That's what this book is. It's a bask. It's a big bask in the reflected glory of some major, major, major musicians. Even though I think that, you're not going to read this for, musical judgments, there is some interesting explanation about how music librarians work and how concerts really come together and that stuff. That's interesting, but we've heard all of that before, frankly. You can get that elsewhere. What really shines through is Shear's unbelievably strong and compelling personal story. And I enjoyed it very, very much. I think it was a story that was well worth being told, and it's well worth reading. And I urge you to give it a shot and see what you think too. It's amazing. I guarantee you that. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks for joining me. Take care.